Essentially, the EU has been quite, well, to say the least, quite a criticised type of system and union, if we can call the union now at this point, or if you even want to just call it like a sovereign state, or if you just want to call it a single market or anything like that. At the minute, people are quite confused by what it actually is because there are issues surrounding like the Brexit and sovereignty and the EU Parliament, which is causing some uproar at the moment. That people are starting to struggle to decide on what they want, for the future of their country. Should they remain in the EU? Should they remain and continue to live their freedom to work, live, and travel anywhere in the EU without the need of visas and with everybody sharing like a similar type of passport? Of course, we will all obviously take advantage of these types of liberties because, well, they will come in very handy and very useful for like our futures, especially future for children, whoever may want to indeed go on to work. Say, if you live in Ireland, you may want to move to Spain or Germany, for example, to go work for another business or another company, and instead of having to go through an entire visa application, looking at your record, all that, and having the health insurance, you can just move there, and it's very simple thanks to the European Union, and they can get that sorted at 1, 2, 3. All you have to do is send a couple of documents, there you go, your way, no applying, you can just go because you're an EU citizen, you have an EU passport, and that's covered enough for you. In further, however, the EU has been quite criticised recently. A reason for this is because, well, one, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, has recently got accepted into being not a leader but kind of like a president, or I'm not too sure on this because the EU is quite messy on my behalf at the minute. In the north it's very messed up. But from what I know, he in some sort of leadership bid or some sort of presidential bid of the EU. A president of the EU does not have any actual sovereignty power or anything like that, or legislation power in any of the EU member states, because again, they are only member states. They aren't EU states, they aren't EU countries, they are EU members states. This is what is also quite confused quite often. People think that if you join the EU, you are a EU country or an EU state, kind of like the way the United States works. No, we are not a federacy, and it is certainly not a federal country. It's nowhere near a country. That would be actually quite quite criticised. However, from where I'm speaking, it's not nowhere near a country, but people would say otherwise at the moment, because I can kind of see why. But personally, I wouldn't really say it's anywhere close to a country quite yet. But I wouldn't put that past them at the minute, the way things are looking. With the European Union, things are very criticised very easily. For example, you have the likes of the way the EU sees things in each country. They have EU laws. EU laws are types of laws that are passed in the European Parliament with representatives known as MEPs, or members of the European Parliament, elected from each country, where an election will take place. And if there's someone steps down, the party will choose a different representative to represent your country. I believe there's 3 or 4 from each country, or each member state, but each country, world looking, internationally looking, speaking, but EU speaking, I would say member state speaking. And these people would ultimately join the EU. They would go into the parliament and they would vote on different EU laws. So any problems or agendas that are brought up from each country, that would go into that parliament, that would be judged. Should these countries apply to that, yes or no? And whoever gets the majority vote then indeed wins. Now there are things about this. In the EU Parliament, if the majority votes, for example, say 70 or 80% of that Parliament agrees that this EU law should be implemented for all EU member states, then that may go ahead. However, in the future, there are ways that member states or countries can indeed apply to back out of that EU law and not apply it in their country. Because if they have a good reason that can be justified correctly, and that it seems acceptable to the EU and on their behalf, not on our behalf, then therefore that can be, accepted widely, in all different ways. Because the EU is such a big thing at this point, they're kind of like, right, well, you are, say, I'm going to use, for example, Poland. Okay, so this EU law has been implemented, it's been in power for 2 years, you're unhappy with it. Obviously, we can't just remove it for everyone because you say so, so therefore we're going to do a deal with you, and they would make some sort of deal. So that means they would say, right, you cannot apply this EU law, however we're going to have to revoke something else along with this that we have applied to you that you are happy with, because therefore it only makes it fair. Now, in the past, there has been, breakings of this type of rule because whoever's in leadership, whoever's just kind of in charge there, with a very confusing system at the moment. I'll have to make a whole entire video explaining how the EU works. I don't really have time to put in this video because this is just a whole different type of coverage. The way Emmanuel Macron is currently deciding it. The way he's trying to do it at the moment is, whenever he got into power there, he essentially wants each country, whenever an EU law applies, that rule to just be gone. Once an EU law is implemented, that is to stay. That EU law cannot be moved no matter what country you are, no matter what your reasoning is. If it does obviously apply in a seriousness matter or something, creating poverty or something like that, of course it can be removed, and probably actually for the rest of the countries just to be safe. However, the way things are looking, it doesn't seem that way. It seems that they're just going to, with his part, they were fired with it before, the rules, but now it looks like as if that is changing. The way things are going at the moment, he's going that, well, that you can't back out once one and the rules apply. That is it. You have to follow that rule unless you really, really, really want to kind of go against it. But that will be a whole massive kind of EU court kind of thing, and that will be months of disaster essentially, and everybody will have to go through everything, and it would just be a total nightmare. Continue on with this. Emmanuel Macron kind of wants, well, basically the entirety of the EU to, have sovereignty over one another's countries. Now, people are already saying that the EU does have quite a number of sovereignty, not full sovereignty, but about 40-50% of sovereignty over each country. Hence why Brexit happened and why the United Kingdom left the European Union. That is for a different video, it's not for now, because there's a whole process and a half. However, the way things are going at the minute, I can see other countries leaving the EU, but there are many countries, member states, that want to really make the EU more stronger just because of the peace aspect, which is of course fair, and because of the trade aspect. Trade and peace are the two number one keys here of the European Union, and the two biggest advantages that we have, and the only reason why countries actually want to remain a part of it. However, they're not really noticing, but they are remaining for the wrong reasons as well. They are allowing an EU Parliament to take place. They're allowing 40-50% of their sovereignty being taken off them by the European Union, because any law that's passed in your country through your own electoral system, through your own legislation system or executive system, that can actually be misjudged by the EU after. So while you have your own politics in your country, and while you have your own government and your own kind of whole legislation system in your country, and everything's passed through and it's all vote, yep, there we go, law in place, the EU can actually turn around and say last minute, if someone in the EU Parliament brings it up and is unhappy with it, then that way the EU can go against it and say, right, we don't like this, and then they go to the EU Council, and that EU Council will then probably either consult the EU Parliament or consult higher up officials if it's a really serious matter, and they will say, right, we need to go to this member state and ask them to revoke this law with immediate effect, even though it was passed with full consent in that country, and the member of parliaments in those member states, they can just revoke it anyway, because the EU has so much sovereignty over that they can actually revoke that if they're unhappy with it, because they don't want a member state getting too ahead of themselves, which is understandable. But doing that, removing someone's law that they rightfully passed, is kind of controlling and is sovereignty stealing. And finally, about the EU, well, it's a good system, it's great for trade, it's great for peace, and I think those are the main reasons why we should remain in it. But the only issue at the minute is, of course, well, Brexit being one of them. But in addition to that, I do believe that the sovereignty problem is going to be a major issue. Emmanuel Macron, this is the first time I've seen something like this, he wants EU sovereignty to increase. He wants to have more power over these countries. And if that happens, that means the next leader, or even at the end of his term, maybe in a couple of years, we may see the EU basically have control almost 100% over all these countries overall. It may not be told that way, but it will be. The way things will be controlled behind closed doors.